Welcome back again. Chase the Traveler, still in Cuiabá, Brazil, but bringing you info on Japan. Just because I left doesn't mean that I still don't have valuable information to give you guys. All right, without further ado, the title of this is Foreigners Have a Disadvantage in Japan. Now, that might be news to a lot of you, especially for you guys that haven't spent any time in Japan. You come to Japan looking at all the wonderful things, you see these buildings, you go down to Shinjuku, you go down to Shibuya, you go down to Ginza, you go down to Osaka, Kyoto, and you're looking at all these things, you're like, wow! Then you got foreigners on YouTube making all these videos, like 3 ladies living in the Japanese hillside, making it look like it's paradise, making it look like they don't have a worry in the world. But is it really like that? Is it really a paradise? Can you play on equal footing? Let me tell you, foreigners, of course, have a disadvantage in Japan. They have a huge disadvantage in Japan. Now, some people might not think about it. Some people might not care, especially if you just get there. I mean, most people don't even notice it until they have to do something and they find that they're very, very, very limited in how they could do it. I mean, this happens when you're trying to get service. Look at these things. I've always seen these things oops, sorry. I guess they're a little afraid, so I'm just going to leave them alone. But anyway, like I was saying, foreigners in Japan think that, nothing can go wrong, that you can compete on equal footing. I even had someone reach out to me and say, hey, something, I want to become a real estate developer in Japan. He needed my consultation. Ain't gonna happen, dude. Sorry. Ain't gonna happen. And of course, the thing that makes Japan really, 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 really confusing to a lot of people is there are no laws that prevent foreigners from doing certain things, or if there are, they're really, really hidden because nobody can point any of them out. Or maybe Japanese lawyers just aren't gonna show you that. I know that in Korea, if you're biracial, if you have like one parent that isn't Korean, you can't even join the army. But let me tell you, in Japan, like I said, you're gonna be limited. And I'm gonna give you a few examples of how limited you're gonna be. If you're working for a Japanese company, I don't care where it's at. I mean, you might point to a few examples of, okay, well, this guy, he's running a pharmaceutical company. It's big. Okay, that's that. Okay, you might find like 1, 2, 3, definitely no more than 5 examples. But when it comes to like 95 or 99% of the rest of us, we're definitely at a disadvantage. I mean, if you go to work for a Japanese factory, you go to work for a Japanese factory and you're a foreigner, more than likely your boss, your supervisor, your manager is going to be Japanese. And more than likely, you're definitely not going to be advancing. You're not going to be manager, you're not going to be supervisor, you're not going to be head whatever. I've seen people, when I first got to Japan, and I was going to a bar. It was called Sam and Dave's. I think it's still around now in Osaka, Shinsaibashi. Now, in this bar, there was a guy that used to work there. He was the only foreigner working in that bar. He was the only foreigner working, and for years, he was like the longest serving employee, but every year or so, you'd find a new Japanese manager there that they plucked out of nowhere. And I'm like, hold on a second. You've been, this is like a gaijin bar, a bar where foreigners go to. This is the gaijin bar. You've been here for eons, and you're never getting promoted. I mean, unfortunately, this foreigner, I don't know what happened to him, and I've lost contact with him. That was like over 20 years ago, whatever, 25 maybe. Like I said, every 8 months, they'd get a new Japanese manager, and he would never, ever get promoted. I'm like, I was kind of like embarrassed, like, listen, when are you going to be manager? I never said that. But he never got the job. Now, same thing happens with English teachers. I mean, they advertise you coming out there and say, oh, I teach English. I remember I used to wear suits to go teach English, and I thought I was important. Those were the days. And back like in the early 90s, late 80s, you go out there and you tell people you're an English teacher, people are like impressed. They're like, he's making a lot of money. That was the case. I mean, you'd go in there, especially if you're going for a new job, you'd put on a suit and make it look like, you're doing something important. I remember one guy that I used to work with, he used to come to the English conversation school with a suit to teach. And I was like, dude, why do you need to do all of that? I mean, he put on a suit every single day to come teach, but he still ended up getting fired, where he had to put one day that the manager fired him. I remember he put, there used to be a spot in the teacher's room where everybody put their bags and stuff, right? So it was like in the teacher's room, and he pretty much one day got mustard, ketchup, mayonnaise. He knew he was going to leave. He put all of that and dumped it in her bag and just mixed it up in there for her. And he did it in front of everybody. He was like, well, yeah, I'm not happy with her. She's the one that messed with me. And not only that, he had some crazy glue. He pretty much put the crazy glue inside the keyholes and locked everything up so that they couldn't get in, or they couldn't get out. So, with all that effort, coming in with a suit and pretending that you're somebody special, they didn't care. And at that school, you did have some foreign managers, all right, that was one. You did have some foreign managers, some foreigners that were, that was the probably only English school that did it. The others did not. So you had a situation where, like I said, we're always at a disadvantage. Disadvantage at work, disadvantage when you try and assert your rights or the rights that you think you have in Japan. When you go and look for an apartment in Japan, you will be at a disadvantage. And there's not much you're going to be able to do. I mean, housing discrimination in Japan is rampant, especially if you're a foreigner. They think you're going to come inside with your shoes on. Well, sometimes that does happen. They think that you're going to run off, you're going to break stuff. That happens with everybody, even Japanese people. So you're sitting out, and I've had that happen to me. You go to a real estate company, and you've got the money, you've got the job, you've got the track record, so you should get the apartment. But they don't even want to listen. I remember I learned my lesson real quick. As soon as you walk in there, he's like, oh, what apartment do you want to see? Oh, that one. And he's out there, he looks at the other guy like, oh, one moment, please. Chottomatte kudasai. He goes out and calls somebody goes to a back room, and then all of a sudden he comes back and says, hey, you know something? I just spoke to the man, to the owner, and he doesn't allow any foreigners. Now, of course, this goes on in America. Absolutely. But they're not going to come to your face and tell you, hey, you know something? Hey, you know, you're a foreigner. We're not going to take you. I mean, they'll hide it way better. I mean, they know how to hide that stuff back in the States. In Japan, they're like, oh, well, no, he's not going to take you. And there are no legal repercussions for that. So, you have a disadvantage right then and there. When you try and hire an attorney, as soon as you show up, there is no presumption of innocence. There is no presumption that you are to be believed, even by your attorney. And that's why, like I said, you know, the guy Carlos Goshen, he skipped out. He had the money to hire the best, but he didn't trust him. So he knew that he was at a disadvantage even with the resources that he had. So, again, what I'm saying is that there are so many disadvantages in Japan. Another disadvantage that you're going to have in Japan is the type of job that you can do, the type of job that's available to you. I don't care if you're in IT, I don't care whatever job that you have or what qualification you have. I think that if you're qualified, let's say to teach English, you can probably get a job teaching English in Japan, whether it's at a conversation school or some kind of high school, junior high school, elementary school. You can probably teach. But as soon as you get in there, you're not going up. You don't have the same rights as the Japanese English teacher, because she can move up. She can be principal after 20 years. You won't. She's going to get bonuses. I don't know of any. I know of one actually, but not many. High schools, junior high schools that you work at that will actually give you a bonus. But all the Japanese staff get bonuses. So again, you're at a disadvantage. Now, I haven't worked in these industries like IT or these new industries that you see people moving into right now in Japan. But I'm pretty sure if I were to check, Japanese people are getting way more perks than they are. It's the same thing, like I said, you know, with the guy that was working at the bar. He was there 5 years, and he never, ever, ever moved up. That's normal in Japan. And you kind of have to understand that. Now, another disadvantage that you're going to have is when you're talking to people about services. If you go to a restaurant with Japanese people, now, some people might not even call this a disadvantage. The waiter might just unilaterally, for the entire time, ignore you and just look at the Japanese person and have them try and answer everything, even though you speak perfect Japanese. Now again, some people might not say that that's a disadvantage. I mean, especially if you don't want to talk to them. You might say, oh, well, so what? I like that. All right? When you're... I mean, now this is a disadvantage, but you might be responsible for this to a certain degree. Um, if you're in Japan and you have, let's say you have a racial issue, and you know it's racism. You could be white, you could be black, you could be Korean, you could be Chinese, you could be Indian, you could be Nepali, or from Bangladesh, or whatever it is. None of those groups are going to join together and fight against racism in Japan. So Japanese people have an advantage, and you have a disadvantage because you're not going to band together in order to fight for that. So what I've seen is, all right, I've seen like, okay, English teachers on a picket line fighting for certain rights. I know that Koreans fought for certain rights. I'm not sure that the Koreans and the Chinese got together and fought for certain rights. Now, in America, you have black people fought for certain rights, and by default, Indians, Chinese, Koreans, and everybody else benefits from that. In Japan, people are a little too embarrassed, and even foreigners that come from a culture of where, hey, let's go fight for this, when they come to Japan, they kind of like suppress those feelings to a certain degree because they don't want to be shamed. So there is a culture of, you know, I don't want to be shamed, so no, I'm not going to do that. And also it's kind of like, okay, well, what if I do that? I mean, what's the benefit? Usually there's no benefit, so yeah, they might not want to do that because there's not much benefit to it. I don't blame them. But I would say that there are enough foreigners to actually make a difference in Japan. But like I said, this foreigner doesn't want to hang out with that foreigner, and this foreigner doesn't want to fight with this foreigner. Not fight per se, like fight with this foreigner in order to get better quality life in Japan. So you run into all these situations, and like I said, foreigners have a disadvantage in Japan because of that. Now, you even see another disadvantage is when foreigners are on TV. Yep, when foreigners are on TV. Now, when I first got to Japan, there was like Kent Gilbert, Kent Delicate. Now there's like, there's a Nigerian guy, you know, Bobby, all those people. They're on TV, you know, you see them like every day, every other week, every other day or whatever, and you think, man, that guy's like rich. That guy's, you know, he's really, you know, he's it. He's the man. But they're not getting paid as much as the Japanese people that are doing it. And you see them on TV, but you notice, you look at their house like, what the hell is that? I mean, you see some of them are on like serious TV programs, and it's almost like, well, shouldn't you be making a little bit more? I mean, you have situations where I've seen some foreigners fighting with their production company because they haven't been paid millions. And of course, they went to court. Did they win? No. And a lot of foreigners think, okay, well, you know something, I'm on TV. I'm going to make it big in Japan. You're not. You won't. Now, you might go to America as a foreigner. You might make it big there. That happens. Now, if you think you're going to come to Japan and all of a sudden, because you're a foreigner, you're going to make it big? No. Now, do you see foreigners that most Japanese people recognize? Yes. I know 1, 2, maybe 3 or 4. Yeah. But I mean, if that was happening in America or, you know, some European country, they would be living in a place like Beverly Hills somewhere. The foreigners that are on TV in Japan that are really making it, Yeah, they're living better than the rest of us, the average foreigner. Yeah, of course, I'll give you that. But are they living like the foreigners who go to America and make it big there? No, absolutely not. So was it worth it? I don't know. I mean, yeah. I mean, if you're on TV, that's probably better than that's probably definitely better than teaching English or working at a bar. Yeah, I would agree. But like I said, you're at a disadvantage. Whatever industry you, the foreigner, go to in Japan or enter in Japan, you are at a disadvantage. You are most certainly not getting a few things that your local counterpart is probably getting. You will never make it as big as them. And I stand by that. Now, does that mean that if you go to Japan, you're not going to improve your life? No, I've grown a bit over here. I've learned quite a bit over here. And depending on what you were doing, wherever it is that you came from, you might most certainly improve your standard of living. You might have improved your life to a certain degree. You might be doing better than you were back. Like I said, you might be doing better than you were back. My goodness. It's like my English is like going down the tubes. I mean, first I was in Japan, now I'm in Brazil, so now I've got the Brazilian effect. And what I meant to say was that depending on what you did when you were in your home country, when you get to Japan, it might be a step up. That can happen. But like I said, you're never going to outdo the Japanese in Japan. You know, I looked at this park online. Excuse me. I mean, I did enjoy seeing the capybara. Been seeing them on TV for so many years. But I'm not all that impressed with this park. Especially in New York. I mean, you have Central Park, and that thing goes on for miles. I mean, this one is just like one big pond and a couple capybara and some nice pictures. That's what got me here. But I'm not that disappointed, but it's a little underwhelming, I would say. But hey, let's get back to the topic. So, what I'm saying is that when you go to Japan, just keep that in mind. Keep in mind that you are at a disadvantage all the time. Yes, you might get ahead here and there. But will you ever reach your full potential? I seriously doubt it. And I stand by that. Anyway, Chase the Traveler, coming to you from Kuiyaba, Japan, in a park that I just can't pronounce, sorry. So, anyway, if you like my content, please like and subscribe. Please share, buy me a coffee, and see you in the next episode.